Ready for this, huh? You ready for this, huh?
Get on the ground.
Ready for this?
Hi, welcome to another episode of Car to Car. I'm Ramon.
And hi, I'm Dana. And today we'll discuss the case out of Aurora, Colorado Police Department where Rayjon Stubblefield was shot August 30th, 2025. Ramon, what are your thoughts?
When I look at this case, it's very disturbing because I think that more could have been done by the police officer to gain control of the suspect. What do we really have here? A traffic stop and then ultimately led to someone dying. As citizens, we have to make sure that we don't flee. This was a basic traffic incident that led to a car chase and eventually a car crash where the suspect crashed into another car and the officer gets out at gunpoint. And so he tries to get the suspect to comply, and the suspect doesn't readily comply, but gets out of the car, and somehow has a gun. I didn't see a gun in his hand, but eventually when he tries to take the suspect to the ground, I hear him saying, "Get away from that gun," and things of that nature. So rightfully so, I think he was okay to take his weapon out and to be able to protect himself against whatever situation he was going to have involving the suspect and this gun that was apparently on the ground a few meters away. And so ultimately it carries on until he eventually punches the suspect in the face. And I think if you're going to punch a suspect in the face, you're going to have to give that knockout punch. And so he obviously didn't do it. It agitated the suspect a lot more. And so now you have this suspect coming at you in a fighting stance. You got your gun out and you can't put it in. And so when that happens, you see the two shots to the chest, and I guess he didn't fall fast enough. And so then he gets shot in the head. When I look at it, no matter how many times I look at this, I'm like, man, this is a bad shooting, but I can see how it can get wrapped into what people may believe is a good shooting. Because when you look at it, what do you see? You see an officer with a gun pointed at a suspect, and the suspect charges him. Immediately, that becomes a good shooting. But when you peel back the onion of it, and you look at the total layers of it, so when this car crashes, and we take it piece by piece, he follows the car and chases the car, crashes. Okay, now what do I have? Now I have some sort of felony stop or something of that nature, and I think he should have went into that mode. But no, he approaches the car, he takes his gun out and says, "I'm going to shoot you." And so tries to control him. The suspect gets out of the car. So we go to the next part. So now he's out of the car. Somehow a gun gets on the ground where he tries to tackle him and he falls to the ground. Like, officers, we really got to make sure that our tactics are sound. We have to role play these things in our head before these situations happen. And this situation obviously wasn't role played in his head or something to that nature, but we have to role play in our heads. But I'll stop there and let you go because I have so many thoughts on this. And
Well, you know I love you.
you want me to go? Want me to continue?
No, well, I love you. But I have a different perspective. I did not see any justified shooting at all.
Okay. No, I'm not saying it's
I
justified.
didn't see how it could appear to be justified. And the reason why I say that, I'll start in the back to come forward.
Okay.
At the time that he shot him twice in the chest, because you just want to stop the threat.
Okay.
Right? I don't think he could, because he wasn't charging. He was advancing, but I don't think he was charging fast enough to even. I didn't see him charging him. I just saw him advancing towards him when he shot him twice in the chest. At that time, he wasn't, to me, moving fast enough to gain the power to overtake him. At that point, the officer could have just stepped back fast. He didn't have to run back. He could have stepped back to assess to see if the two shots to the chest would have stopped him. But the third shot definitely was unnecessary because the two shots to the chest had already stopped him in his tracks. So I didn't see anything that appeared to be. And then I'll go back. The officer to me was always in a position of control, in a sense that when after the crash, the suspect, Rayjon Stubblefield, was in the car, a little bit stunned from the crash. So he did advise over the radio about the crash, but he never told the dispatcher that he had one at gunpoint. So that would immediately got some backup to him at that time that he could have waited for. So nonetheless, you have him at gunpoint, and the Stubblefield gets out of the car. At that point, he grabs him, pulls his shirt. He's wrestling with him with his gun in his hand. Before he put his hand on him to grab him, he could have transitioned to a taser, pepper spray, or something else, some other disabling thing, before you fight with somebody with your gun in your hand.
I agree.
So, during that shuffle, apparently a gun is tossed to the side, and now he's following him, and he eventually tells him, Stubblefield telling someone else to get the gun. He could have told other persons, hey, don't get the gun. Probably also could have gave verbal commands to other people, move away from the gun, directed them while he watches Stubblefield, but he chose to hit him in the head very hard, which wasn't just de-escalating, it escalated even more. And then we get to the point where he advances toward him and then he shoots him 3 times. So that's why I just disagree. I mean, obviously, the suspect should have complied. That goes without saying. But I think there were opportunities where the officer could have de-escalated the situation and also was in a position to wait for backup.
I agree. The only part that I said that will probably appear that is justified is if you have your gun in your hand and somebody comes towards you and you discharge, it can be seen as a threat where I didn't have any other option because he came at me, I had my gun in my hand, he saw my gun, so I'm looking at it from that standpoint. I do not believe that the shooting itself is justified because of all of the things you said, plus more. You know, when I look at this, I'm like, the officer put himself in that position.
Absolutely.
And so what we have to do is when we take a step back and really look at it, we have to understand that, okay, what tactics have I been trained with? What tactics is the best for me to do in this situation? I think as officers, we're always rushing in when we should just take a step back. And for whatever reason, we feel like it's robbery to take a tactical step back or retreat. A tactical retreat is what I'm trying to say. And so we have to take a tactical retreat. And I think the officer should have took a tactical retreat. And I was taught to and just learned over the years that if you're going to go hands-on in you got to make sure that you could take that person. And if there's someone that's my size, there has to be at least 2 or more of us that's going to be able to try to control him. It probably is going to take at least 3 people because the guy looked pretty much, he was in decent shape. Yeah. And so we have to have a self-assessment to make sure that us ourselves are able to affect that type of arrest. You know, we put ourselves in these situations, everybody say, oh, he should have complied. He should have complied. But sometimes our tactics, like you said, amplify a situation. And so I think his tactics or lack thereof amplified the situation.
For sure, I agree.
I got a few more things. I don't know if you don't have anything.
By all means.
Okay, so my other things really deal with, how I broke this down in a totality because we didn't talk about the back end of it where he seemed after the shot, he was just so stunned that he was kind of paralyzed. And he really he didn't like really pay attention to the rest of the scene where he really could have gotten hurt by a car that was coming, not really giving commands or things of that nature. I'll break this down individually from citizen, the bystander, the officer, and just things of that nature. And so just all of that.
Yeah.
So I would say citizens, don't flee in a car because you see what happens. You had this accident where somebody else got hurt that had nothing to do with the situation. If a police officer, you encounter a police officer, especially if he has you at gunpoint, you know, just comply. Like you said, I think the the suspect was stunned after the car accident, so the officer has to understand that too. And I don't know if at that point he saw a weapon. I didn't see a weapon, but sometimes when people are reaching inside their car, we assume it's a weapon. But then he comes out of the car, and once you get out of the car and he's dazed, his tactics should have been different. He should have said, okay, maybe I need to retreat back to my car, or maybe I need to stay right in this area. Even if the person was going to run away or go off, that's why we have a bolo and a perimeter, be on the lookout. So we have to, as a police officer, he should have waited for backup once the car crash happened. We should have, if the person was going to run or flee, we have a bolo or perimeter that we could set up. He has to do some training too, because I see why he probably hesitated to try to find the intermediate weapon, because he couldn't holster his gun. Because if you look, there's two videos. When you look at that second video from the back, you see he can't put his gun in his holster.
He did attempt to try to put it there. And that was right before he grabbed it from the back.
Yeah, and we have to train. I remember they'd say when you have a new holster, you got to practice with your holster 1,000 times to make sure that you could put it back without looking. And it looks like that he couldn't do that. And I know that's one thing that I always train, to be able to put my gun up without looking, because you want to keep your eyes at the suspect. And you got to realize the size dynamic. Police officers, when you're dealing with a situation or any situation, if you're going to try to take someone into custody or go hands-on, don't do the knockout punch. Tactics wise, distance and time, verbal commands are what you should be doing to protect yourself in the scene. When I look at this from an internal affairs perspective, they're really going to look at the decision making of the officer. They're going to look at the backup, his overall tactics, his ability or lack thereof to render aid. Just because someone's shot in the head doesn't mean that they're dead. They could still have some sort of life. It may be a vegetable or whatever, but that's not your determination. Your goal is still to render aid. And you saw some people on the scene still trying to render aid. And like I said, I think that there should have been an attempt to use an intermediate weapon instead of shooting. And that's pretty much it. My final thoughts are just that. I think they're probably going to, we always try to clear these things instead of just telling the truth about it. I would hope that Internal Affairs does a fair investigation, look at the totality of it. Oh, the one thing I left out too is the bystanders. Man, let me tell you, I don't know how I would have been able to take it if that was my father and I see him get shot and then get shot in the head, and I was trying to calm the situation down. So I have to commend the son of the apparent son in this situation, because that had to be hard.
It was hard, and you could tell from his body language he was traumatized. When he got on the phone and he was speaking to whomever he was speaking to over the phone, and he just was shocked and traumatized and in disbelief. Yes, I am grateful that he did not make the situation worse, because an officer in that situation could have felt threatened again and could have shot him as well. And I would like to thank the ER nurse who was on the scene, who rendered aid, and also the officers who rendered aid as well in that situation, because that was a tough situation.
Yeah.
But I do see opportunities for use of force training, chase policy training, because at the end of the day, it was a traffic stop.
Mm-hmm.
And he wasn't committed to chasing. He was trying. He didn't have grounds to. But I think he saw the accident, or he saw him probably run a light or something, because he turned that siren off, and then a few seconds later, that car crash occurred.
Yeah.
So just make sure you're chasing for a valid reason. Make sure that the juice is worth the squeeze, because chases usually ends in crashes, and you see how catastrophic it could be. So you want to make sure you're chasing for forcible felonies and those type of things, and definitely wait for backup. Use your radio skills. Let communications know you have someone at gunpoint. Wait on your backup if you're in a position to do so. And as you say, if the person is going to run away while you're waiting on your backup, set up that perimeter.
Yeah. You said forcible felonies, you mean like armed robbery, murder,
Yes.
armed burglary, things that are felonies that have any type of force in them.
Yes.
Okay, that's all I got.
That's all I have. Thank you for another episode of Car to Car Podcast. Please be sure to like, share, subscribe. Please comment and let us know your feedback on this incident.
Until next time.